All right. So I'm going to start the training session off by starting to share my screen, and then I'm going to run through the front end of the site just as if you're a user, just to give you guys all the context behind how the sites are set up, so you're familiar with what we're actually editing in the back end. So give me just 1 second to share my screen. All right, you guys should now be looking at the homepage of the old Brownlee site. Is that correct? If anyone can't see that, please speak up. Awesome, I'll take that as we all can see it. So I want to first start off by just giving you guys a brief overview of the functionality of the site and how everything is set up. So there are a number of different types of pages on the site. So I'm going to start by going through the different types of pages. Obviously, just like most sites, the home page of your site is a little bit different than every other page of the site, with the primary goal of this page being to direct the users to the specific area of the site that they're looking for. I want to bring your attention to a few features of this site. So first of all, on the home page, we've got this rotating banner. This is one of the few things that you actually cannot edit directly through the dashboard. So if we ever need changes to the rotating banner for any of the sites, this would be something you need to reach out to our team to set up, just so we can style this text to be, really nice and beautiful and edit the images to fit within that specific frame. That said, every other piece of content on this page is editable by your team. So all of the home pages, and these are all set up very similarly, although the content between the individual sites might be slightly different. You might see different text here on your particular site or a different information in the bucket on your particular site, but all of the elements should be relatively similar between the sites. The homepage also has a big chunk of text that introduces the facility, a button to learn more, and then there's also a couple of specific informational buckets that appear on each of the site, just bringing people to key features of the website. At the bottom of every single page of your site, you've got two things. You've got a virtual tour call out. Then if someone clicks on this, they get taken to a page that has a video on it. And then you've got the footer, which appears on every single page of the site. The other types of pages on the site are the interior pages. So I'm going to go to the Who We Are page. So the interior pages are where most of the content of your sites live. This is really the meat and potatoes of the websites. A vast majority of the pages of the sites are called interior pages. Obviously, we don't have that hero carousel anymore. It just goes right into the page content on the left-hand side, and then you've got some spaces for some images on the right, followed by an optional informational bucket, and then your buttons with the general configuration for the rest of your sidebar. All of the interior pages follow this similar template. So for instance, I can go to Programs and Services, and you can see they've also got all the information on the left, an extra photo on the right, and then some buttons for the sidebar. You can see on every single page, the footer, including that virtual tour callout, the footer information, contact information here, and the header remains consistent for each page. So I'm just going to go to a couple of different types of pages. You can see, again, most of the interior pages are all very, very similar. There's also a couple of extra special pages on the site. Like I mentioned at the start, there is a job posting functionality for your site. So that lives on the Career Opportunities page. This page, you can edit the content above here, but the job postings down here are actually filled in through a different piece of functionality on the site. Like I mentioned at the start, I'm not going to be going over editing the job postings for now, as that's kind of a more advanced, specific functionality that specific people use. But if that's something you guys need training on, feel free to send me an email and we can set up a specific training session to manage this particular section of the websites. The final special page, there's two more special pages I want to bring out. The first is this contact page, in the fact that this page just has a form on it, and when someone fills out this form, it gets emailed to a particular person that you set up for each of the sites. I can also show you how to change who receives these submissions as well. And then finally, the last different type of page is called the blog pages. So this blog aggregates the latest events, and you can create new posts that get displayed here in reverse chronological order, which basically means the most recent post appears first, and older posts appear after that. So you can see this site's using it to highlight some photos of the residents and staff of recent going-ons at the location. This can be used to highlight, things like future events, highlight photography or past events, or to share information that's topical to your users, like let's say if COVID-19 visitations change or something like that. That pretty much covers it for how the front end of the site is structured. Before I proceed to actually making changes to the site and actually dealing with the WordPress dashboard, I want to open it up to see if you guys have any questions. Do you guys have any questions, or is anything not making sense so far? I will take silence as we are all good. And as I'm going through the WordPress dashboard, do feel free to stop me if you have any questions. A lot of what we're going to be going through kind of builds on itself. So it's important you're understanding everything as we're going through it. The first thing I want to show you how to do with regards to editing the sites is how to actually access the place where you can make your changes. This location is called the WordPress Dashboard, or it's also called the back end of the site. In order to get there, we don't actually have any login links anywhere on the site. There's a security reason why we do this. But what that means is in order to access the login page, you actually have to edit the URL of the site directly to navigate directly to that login page. Because you have to do this, we always recommend that once you get to the login page, you bookmark it in your browser so that you don't have to edit the URL again each time you want to access the login page. To access the login page for any of the sites, what you need to do is you need to go to the home page of the site you're trying to edit. So in this case, I'm on the home page of Old Brownlee. Once you're on the home page, you'll click into the edit bar at the top, where the URL appears, and then type in /WP, which stands for WordPress -admin. Once you type that in and hit enter, it's going to take you to the login page of the site. That's going to look like this. On this page, you'll enter in your username and email address and can log into the site. A couple of things I want to point out here. There's a remember me functionality. This exists on most websites on the web. I just want to stress the importance of the security of this site. So obviously, if you leave yourself logged in by using this remember me functionality, you should be the only person who uses your computer. If anyone else uses your computer, it's really important we don't check this, because once you're logged in, if someone visits the front end of that site, they're actually going to be able to see an indication that they're logged in. And if they're at all familiar with WordPress, they're going to know that they have the ability to make changes to the site if they see that. So it's very important that you only check this remember me if you're the only one who uses your device. If you ever forget your password, you can click this lost password link underneath the login page and then enter in your username or email address, and the WordPress system will email you an email. In that email, you'll find a link, and you can click on that link basically to set a new password for your account. So if you ever forget your password, this is a good way to have it reset. If for whatever reason you do not receive that email address, you can always reach out to our team, and we can manually set a password for you. You can also reach out to any other user that has an administrator account on the site, and they also have the ability to manually reset your password as well. Once you've logged into the site, you will arrive at the dashboard homepage, which is going to look something like this. Before I go into the specifics of how to edit different things, I want to take a moment to explain how to navigate between the front end and the back end of the site, as we'll be using this a lot as we go through the site to make our changes, as I find it's often more convenient to use this way to navigate than navigating to where you need to make the change in the dashboard. So what I want to bring to your attention is this black bar that appears at the very top of the site. This is what's called the WordPress Overlay, and what's special about this bar is the overlay appears on both the front end of the site and the back end. So this is exactly why I stress how important it is to not check that remember me if anyone else is using your computer, because if I click on the top left link where it says Old Brownlee Community Care Center, it actually takes me to the front end of the site. And now you'll notice that that black bar still appears at the top, the WordPress Overlay, and it actually has some contextual buttons that we can use to quickly navigate to directly where we make the changes on the site via these edit page buttons. One of the easiest ways to navigate to the back end and to make changes is to log into the site and then navigate on the front end to where you need to make the change. So for instance, if we needed to add another service here, we would navigate to the programs and service on the front end, and we can use this edit page button to go directly to the page we're editing. Another thing we can do through this overlay is to edit our own user profile. So when we send over user credentials, the credentials you'll receive from our team are very secure, but they are very difficult to remember, and that the password is likely just all gibberish. Because of that, it often makes sense that when you log into for the first time, you may want to change that password to something that's a little bit easier for you to remember. In order to do that, we can use this overlay, again, to hop directly to the spot in the dashboard where we make that change. So on the top right-hand side of the overlay, you'll see Howdy and then your name. And you can click on that and hit Edit Profile to go directly to the spot where you can edit all of the settings for your own profile. On that page, you can scroll all the way down. You'll see an Account Management section. And in that section, there's a New Password button. You can hit the Generate Password, and then you enter in your new password. Depending on how strong or weak your password is, the system might prompt you to confirm that you're using a weak password. If this appears, I would recommend making sure your password's a little bit stronger. This tool will give you a little bit of an indication of how strong your password is, but it's not a hard requirement. So obviously use your best common sense and judgment when setting your passwords. Once you're done making any change in WordPress, and this is consistent for everything with WordPress, we always need to find a blue button to save our progress. Just navigating, after I make this change here and navigating away from the page, it will not save my change. I always need to basically tell WordPress, hey, I'm done making my changes, please save what I have changed. These buttons often appear at the very bottom or very top of the page. Now, obviously, I don't actually want to change my password, so I'm not going to hit this blue button. I'm instead just going to navigate away from this page. The nice part about WordPress is when you do that, if it notices you've entered any content, if you've changed anything on the page, it'll give you a prompt saying, hey, we notice you've made some changes and you're trying to leave. If you leave, your information isn't going to be saved. Are you sure you want to do that? So this can be a little pretty convenient in case you'd forget to save a post, to remind you to save the post. In this case, though, I do not want to make the change, so I'm just going to navigate away. And remember, when I just navigate away without saving, my changes are not saved. Awesome. So is everything making sense so far? No questions so far? All right, I will take that as a yes. Awesome. So the next thing I want to go through is some user management. So one of the most common things that you'll be doing on the site is either, maybe you'll be adding new users, maybe you have an assistant or someone who you want to grant access to edit the site, or you might be editing existing users on the site. Let's say if you're an administrator and you want to lock down the site to make sure it only has access to the people that you want it to have access. So I want to briefly take a moment to show you guys user management, and it's also very similar to editing your own profile. So to get to user management, we'll have to go to the dashboard, which I'm on currently. And again, as a reminder, if you're logged in, an easy way to get to the dashboard is through this WordPress overlay. In the top left-hand side, you'll see the name of the website. In this case, it's Old Brownlee Community Care Center. And if you click on that link, it takes you to the dashboard. Once you're on the dashboard, on every single page of the dashboard, you'll see this left sidebar. And this has all of the different links and ways for us to navigate to the specific sections of the site to make our changes. There are a lot of links in this sidebar, but we only actually are going to be using a small number of these. So just keep in mind that you won't need to know what every single one of these things does. So to edit users, it's pretty straightforward. We click on this user button on the left-hand sidebar. And once we click on that, we see a list of every single user that's on the website. We can see their username, their name, their email, and the specific role they have. From this page, we can edit, if we're an administrator, we can edit any existing account. So because I'm an administrator, let's say someone needed their password reset, I could click into their account, and it will take me to editing their account just like the page I got to edit my own account. From this page, I can do things like change the role they have access to, or even generate a new password for them, just like you would set a password for yourself. Again, once I've made my changes, whether I was setting a new password for someone or if someone's email changed or something like that, if I wanted to save those changes, again, I always have to hit the blue update user button or update button somewhere on the site. Obviously, I don't actually want to change this password though, so again, I'm just going to leave without saving. Another common thing you might want to do on this users page is to create new users. To do that, there are a few different ways. From the sidebar, we can hit this add new button under users. We can also hit the add new button on the users page, or from that convenient WordPress overlay at the top, we can use the new button and go user here. No matter which way you get to the page, it's all going to take you to the same location where we set up our new user. To do this, we add a username. We generally use the naming schema first initial of the first name and full last name. However, you can set this to be whatever you want. It can even be an email address for the username. It's totally up to you. Then you set their email. This is required because this is where WordPress will send, emails for lost passwords, emails, any emails from the system will be sent to this. So it's important that this is valid. All of the rest of the fields we can leave blank unless you want to fill them out. And then we have a couple of different options for how we send the user their password. We can leave this send user notification checked, and if so, WordPress will send them a link to log into their account so that you don't actually need to send them their password. If you want to manually send them their password, you can uncheck that, and then again, just like changing a password on any account, you can generate a password, either use the one that's generated or set a unique new one for them, and then email them that password and their email address or username manually to give them their account details. The most important part of this page is the role. The role is what determines what access users have for the site. This role, there are two roles that we can assign. The first role is editor, and this is the lesser permissioned role of the two. This has the ability to edit existing posts and pages and to create new blog posts, but they don't have a lot of controls to affect the plugins of the site or affect the more advanced functionality of the site. They basically only have the ability to edit the content. They do not have the ability to edit users or like I said, anything more advanced. Administrators are the full access account. They have permissions to do absolutely everything on the site, from editing other users to creating new pages to manipulating the plugins and updating the theme. A vast majority of the users are likely to be administrators, but if you have someone who you don't want to have complete access to the site, we always recommend using the editor role. It's always a good idea to always have users have the least amount of permissions they need to do the particular job they have. Once you're done with all that, again, just to reinforce it with WordPress, whenever you're done making changes to a site or creating new content, we always have to find a blue button to save our changes. So if I wanted to save this, I would need to be sure to hit that blue Add New User button. Again, if I just navigate away from this page without doing that, my changes will not be saved. One last thing I want to bring up on the users page is how to delete users. And this is pretty similar to if you wanted to delete a page or a post or really any other kind of content on the page or on the site. So first you navigate to the users page, and then you could hover over the user you want to delete and hit the red delete button. Once a user is deleted, they actually get moved into a trash, and they aren't like permanently deleted right away. So if you do accidentally delete someone, you are able to restore them. And that goes for any type of content on the site. So if you accidentally delete a page or a post or something like that, you always have the ability to go back and restore it unless you go into the trash and manually remove it from the trash itself. It's just like a recycle bin on your computer. So that wraps up going over the user functionality of the site. Do you guys have any questions regarding managing users before I proceed into editing the content of the site? All right, I'll take silence as everything's making sense so far. So the next thing I want to go into, and I'm going to start by doing things that are, some of the most likely things you would be editing on the site, and then I'll get slowly more complex as we go through more elements of the pages. So to give a real world example of something you might want to log into the site to change, one of the most common things you'll be doing is editing the content of an existing page. This is used for things like, you wanted to change the content of your site, maybe correct a typo or update a service, some other information on your site. In order to do that, like I mentioned at the start of the call, I find it's often easiest to use the WordPress overlay to navigate directly to the page where you want to edit, rather than navigating there through the dashboard, but I'll show you how to do both. So to give the example of, let's say we need to add a new service on the Programs and Services page. What I find is the easiest is to navigate to that page on the front end while you're logged in. Again, we know we're logged in because we see this bar. So I'm going to go to our Programs and Services. And then from the WordPress overlay, I can hit this Edit Page button. When I use this Edit Page button, you'll notice it takes me back to the dashboard, and it takes me directly to the page where I can edit all of the content on this page. This is identical as if I go through the dashboard and then click on the Pages link in the sidebar. And then from the Pages link, you'll notice it looks really, really similar to that Users table, where it has a list of, here's the name of the page, here's who made it, the date it was published, and some stats. And on this page, we can scroll and we can find the particular page we want to edit. So in this case, it's Programs and Services, and I can click Edit here. And it takes me to the same page I got to before. So however you find is easiest to navigate the site, we recommend using that. There are a lot of different ways to get to the same content on the site. So now that we're on the page where we edit the page content, I want to start by pointing out each of the different elements on this page and explaining what they're used for. The first, at the very top, I'm basically going to read this top to bottom, left to right. So at the very top, we've got our page title. This is how the page is referred to throughout the WordPress system, and also how it defaults to appearing in your navigation. This is the most important bit of information for search engine optimization. So it's really important that we make the title of the page relevant to the content if ever you need to add new pages. Although adding new pages entirely is probably a less common change you would make to the site. Underneath this title dialog is what's called the permalink. This is something that's automatically set up for you and not something we recommend editing. If you do edit the permalinks to the site, it'll actually require a redirection to be set up to follow best practices on the web. So we do not recommend editing the permalink. If you need to edit the permalink, this is a change that our team can easily make for you. Feel free to send it to us. We just want to make sure that the search engines are notified that the URL of the page has changed and that a redirect is set up so that if anyone has ever created a link to this particular page, let's say maybe your location was featured in a news article, and in that news article they link back to your website or they link back to a particular page on your site. Well, if you change the URL of that page, that link will no longer work. So there are some steps we need to take basically to forward the traffic from the old link to the new link if you do that. So this is a long-winded way of saying this is something that's going to be automatically set up by the system, and you can totally leave this blank. After the title section, we get into the what you see is what you get text editor. This is essentially like a little Word document in the web page. It has all the same functionality and abilities as editing a basic Word document, in that you can apply like headlines, you can apply text, you can apply bold and italic, bolded lists, numbered lists. You can change the alignment of the text, although we do not recommend changing the alignment of the text. We almost always recommend all text on the site is left aligned. One of the reasons for that is because obviously these sites are mobile responsive, so they need to work on mobile devices, and multiple columns of text or left and right aligned text on mobile devices can feel pretty off-putting. So we always recommend leaving that left aligned. Just to show you how you actually manipulate the text here, it's just like a Word document where if you wanted to bold or style something, you would highlight the text and then use the controls to apply those specific styles. If you want to create something like a headline or something like that, you can highlight the text and then use this drop-down paragraph menu to change that to a particular headline, or you can create a new line by hitting enter and then use this to basically set that new line up as your new headline. You'll notice when I pull down this list, we've got a number of headlines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. These are just ordered in size. Headline 1 is really big, headline 2 is a little bit smaller than that, and so on and so forth. The styles as they appear here are pretty similar to how they'll appear on the front end, but they're a little bit different. But you'll notice if I go to the front end page, you see we've got a big headline here, followed by bold italic text, followed by a paragraph. And if I go on the front end, you'll see the font is a little bit different, the sizings are a little bit different, but it's pretty similar to how it's set up. You know, it's a big headline, followed by a bold and italic text, followed by a paragraph, followed by a smaller headline, and so on and so forth. So it's really, really similar, though not 100% identical. Should be close enough, though, that you should be able to confidently set up the content on this site. So like I said, the most common change is just editing content. So if we wanted to just add a bullet, just like editing a Word document, we'd click into the last one, hit enter to create a new bullet, and then we could create the content of our new bullet there. Going to continue to show you the rest of the elements of the site, but that's the overview of how to actually edit the text. After you set up the particular content of the site, the next element is called Yoast Seo. This is a search engine optimization plugin that just helps take the content of your site and makes it a little bit more easily readable by search engines. This is totally automatic and not something you need to worry about. All of the existing pages we've added specific metadata to aid in search engine optimization. And if you create new pages, this will actually automatically pull that content in for you. So this is something you can safely minimize and properly ignore, as that's automatically handled for you. The next thing that I want to point to your attention is this individual page sidebar settings. This controls whether or not we have a bucket of information on the front end of the site. So you can see that it's not set up for this programs and services page right now, but I could choose to display the Our Team bucket or a custom information bucket that has specific content that I can set up on unique to this specific page. So if you wanted some information displayed in a sidebar, you have the ability to do that. Otherwise, you can have it display the Our Team bucket, which I'll show you how to set up in just closer to the end of the call, or we can choose to disable it and display nothing. That's the main content of the site. Now I want to show your attention to these right-hand boxes. These are more configuration options for the page and something you won't really need to edit much except for the original construction of the page in case you're creating new pages. So I'm just going to briefly gloss through this. First, in this publish box, this has all the controls to actually publish your changes, show revisions, change the visibility of the post, and it gives you some stats about the posts. We can use this preview changes button to take a look at how the changes we've made would appear without actually making them live. So you'll recall we added that gibberish underneath that bulleted list. If I hit this preview changes button, it's going to open a new tab in my browser, and it's going to show me exactly what those changes are going to appear like on the front end of the site. So if you're making a lot of changes to a page, or if you are adding an image or doing something different and you want to make sure it looks good on the front end, you can use the preview changes button to take a look at exactly how that it would appear once you save the post. Once you're done reviewing, you can just safely close this tab as it creates a new tab to open that preview. So you can just safely close it if everything looks good. And then just like everything else in WordPress, when you want to save your content, you have to hit a blue update button here. Obviously, I don't want to save these changes. So if I didn't want to save the changes, I could just navigate away. The next element in this section is the page attributes section. Again, this is something that you would need to set up originally on setting up the page, but not something you need to edit after. And this controls the templates of the page. For every single page, all we need to do is just set this to interior page template. Next up is the featured image functionality. So I'm going to flip to the front end and show you. So that's this image that appears in the top right-hand side of every single page. This featured image functionality allows you to specify a specific photo to go there. If you ever want to change it, you can use this remove featured image button and then click set featured image to set up a particular image from your media library. If you wanted to add a new image, we can use this upload files functionality. and then hit select files to choose the files on our computer we want to upload to the site to use. If we want more than one image to appear in the sidebar of the page, we can use this extra featured image functionality to add additional images that appear underneath the featured image. This works identical in that you hit add an additional featured image and then just add this particular image you want to use in that section. You can add as many of these as you want. So if you have a lot of photos you want to display, you're able to do that. Once you've set up the photos, you can also just delete them. As you can see, when I hover over, I get some additional controls. You can use these minus and plus buttons to add new spaces for photos between other photos or to remove the photos you've added. That covers all of the different elements on these pages. Again, if I made some changes to the site and I wanted to save the changes, the most important thing to remember is we always need to hit this blue button to save those changes. And if I navigate away, again, it's going to give me a notification saying, hey, we've noticed you've made some changes. Are you sure you want to navigate away? In this case, obviously, I don't want to edit the content of your live site, so I'm just going to leave the page. And it takes me back to the Pages page. Awesome. So do you guys have any questions so far on what I've covered regarding editing pages? All right. The next thing I'm going to show you how to do is give me just 1 second, let me go through my notes, make sure I'm doing this in the right order. Okay, the next thing I'm going to show you how to do is how to add a new page entirely to the site. So this is something that's not done as frequently for the sites. We haven't noticed that many of the sites actually create new pages, but it's important to know how to do in case you have a particular bit of information you want to share on the site that users would have a reason to return to. In that case, something like a new service, something like, anything specific to that specific facility. Maybe it's a new type of unit you have or something like that. These would all be good reasons to have a new page. To do that, we can go to the Pages page and then hit the Add New button, or from that WordPress overlay, we can go New Page. No matter which way we do it, we're going to get to the same location. This is identical to editing the content of an existing page, except that we need to specify all of the content of our new page. So we'll start off by adding in the title. After we add in the title, before we add the page content, I always recommend the first thing we do is we configure the page settings. In this case, the only thing you need to remember to do is in page attributes, we change this default template to the interior page template. That just tells WordPress that we want this to be an interior page. And when you do that, you'll notice that we actually get this individual page sidebar settings pop up and this extra featured image box pop up as well. That's because now the site knows it's an interior page. It's loading in the extra options we need for those particular page. If you don't set this up, not only will the page not display correctly, but you won't see those two extra bits of information. Once you've set up the page attributes, then it's just as simple as using the word editor to add in your page content. We always recommend starting out with headlines. So you would type in the page content just as if you with whatever content you'd want on the page. Maybe you want some bulleted lists, maybe you want a list of services, so on and so forth. Again, this is pretty much just like adding a Word document. One thing that I want to show you how to do here is how to add an image into a page and how to create a link, as these are common things you might want to do when creating a new page. So the first thing is images. We generally do not recommend adding a bunch of images to the particular pages. Only 1 or 2 images is probably ideal, and a lot of the times the images you do add to the page have a good spot in the featured image section where it might not always make sense to add them to the page content. But that said, you might have a reason to do this, and it's your site. You can set up the content however you guys prefer. So I want to walk you through the process to adding links to content and then adding photos. So the first thing is photos. So I can use this Add Media button to add photography to the page. So when I click Add Media, it opens up the media library just like if we're selecting a featured image. Again, I can use the Upload Files button to choose the files on my machine to upload. So if you had like a new image you wanted to add, you can upload it that way. The one thing I will say though, is it's very important that your team has permission to use the photography on the website. So for instance, one thing we can't do is Google, like just Google search for an image, pull the image off Google, and then upload it to use on the website. You need to make sure you have explicit permission from the license holder to use that photography on your website. So all of the photography our team has added to the media library, we all have, we have full licenses to use, and you're obviously welcome to use it. But if any photography your team takes is obviously good to use, but it's very important that we don't just pull content offline to add to the site. Things like clip art, even stuff like clip art is not something you would be allowed to use on a website without having the explicit licenses to display those. Another thing I want to point out with adding images is when you're displaying someone's likeness, you do need a photo release for that person, which is important to have on file. Again, this isn't something that our team audits or maintains, but it's something that you're expected to have on file in case a conflict ever arises as a result of that, just to make sure you have that documentation on file to cover yourselves. That said, once we add the photo or to the media library, if you upload it, it's going to flip you back to the media library, and then you would just select the photo you want to use. And then before we hit insert into page, we have just one more option we want to set up down here. If we scroll to the bottom of this right-hand sidebar where it shows you some details about the image, the very bottom, this attachment display settings, this is what determines how the image is added. You can make it left aligned, center aligned, or right aligned. Center is good for like bigger images. Left and right aligned is good for like smaller ones. The second most important thing is the size. By default, and almost always, you're going to want to use full size. This will make the image as big as it can get and fill the space of the page. It will not overflow. So if you have an image that's a little bit too big, it's going to crop it to fit into the page. If you want it to be smaller than the full resolution, though, you can specify, hey, I want this specifically to be smaller here as well. So I'm going to go ahead and align it center and put it full size. And you can see when I enter it in, it doesn't skew or stretch it, but it fills the full width of the page, and it has that image added for me. So that's how you add images. If you decide after you put that in, you want to edit it, you can click on the image, and you'll see we've got some controls. You can change the alignment. Let's say if I wanted to align it left or right or center, or if I wanted to edit or remove the image. Another thing you might want to know how to do is how to add a link to the site. So just like a WordPress doc, or just like a Word document, the first thing you do to set up a link is to type in the text that link will be. So we'll just make it link. Then you'll highlight it and use the insert/edit link button to paste in the URL or start typing in the name of the page you want to add. So one of the nice things about WordPress is you don't actually need to remember. You don't actually need to like go and navigate and find what the actual URL of the page you're looking to link to is. You can actually use the search functionality just to have WordPress grab that link for you. So if I wanted to link this to the programs page, the programs and services page, I can start typing in programs. And it's going to give me a list of every page on my site that has the text I entered in. So from this list, I can select programs and services, and you can see when I select that, it replaces this with the proper URL. So you don't actually need to manually grab that. Once you've set that up, you can hit the blue apply button, and then now you can see that this is turned into a link. The rest of the content, again, the featured images I already went over, so I'm not going to go through again, but that pretty much covers how to create a new page. Once you're done creating this page, we have two different ways to proceed. So the first way to proceed is we can save this as a draft. This does not make the page live or accessible, but it saves it as a draft that another user can come back to edit and then publish at a later date. Or we can go ahead and publish the post. If we publish the post, it'll be accessible if someone has the link online, but it's not automatically added to navigation. So if we wanted to add this to navigation, there is an additional step we have to do after we publish the page. Again, though, I don't actually want to add any content to your site, so I'm going to just leave away from this page without saving it, and that page will not be saved. So once I've published my new page, if I want to add it to the navigation, there is just one additional step we need to take. This is basically to tell WordPress where you want the site to live on the site. It doesn't just make an assumption on where you want to place the page at. You need to manually specify it. We do that by going to Appearance, Menus. From here, we have a list that shows the navigation of your site. And I want to bring to your attention that we have some indentation here. The links that aren't indented are the parent level links. These are the links that appear as the buttons without any hovering. Underneath those are what's called the children links. These appear once you hover over the particular buttons and are indented under. When you're adding new links to the site, as you can see when I go to the front end, we don't really have any room on the parent level links to add any new links. So you wouldn't be able to add a new link as a parent level link. Any page you add, you would want to add as a child level link. To do that, we use the dialog on the left-hand side called Add Menu Items. And then if you've just created a page, it should be at the very top of the most recent tab that's selected. If not, though, you can hit the search button and start typing in the name of the page that you want to add. So I can just start typing in programs and then click Programs and Services. And then when I hit Add to Menu, that link gets added at the very bottom of the navigation menu. Then all I need to do is drag and drop this to wherever I want that page to appear. So if I wanted this to be the first link, this is who we are, I could put that right here. One thing to keep in mind, though, when you do this is it's really, really important that we don't accidentally indent this a third time. So if I wanted to put this under who we are, and I accidentally do this, where it's now indented under the child link who we are, this would be incorrect, and this actually wouldn't even appear on your website. So it's really important that we only have one indentation level and that we don't add this as a parent level link. So for instance, if I do it like this, where it's not indented, this wouldn't be how you add it. You'd want it to do as a child level link of an existing link. If you wanted to remove it, you can click on any of these links, pull out the drop-down menu, and then hit the red Remove button to remove that link. And then once you're done making your change, just like everything with WordPress, once you want to save your change, you need to find a blue button to save that progress. If you just navigate away without hitting that button, again, your changes won't be saved. So that covers editing existing pages and adding new pages. Does anyone have any questions regarding page management or anything that I just covered before I get into the blog posts? All right. So the next thing I want to show you how to do, and this is actually a little bit easier, is how to edit existing blog posts or how to create new blog posts. So to edit blog posts, we actually do need to go to the dashboard. So from the front end, I clicked on that dashboard link in the top left, and then we will navigate to the post section here. In the post section, we see a list of all of the latest posts. In this case, on this site, there's just one post called Latest Events. And if we click into that post, we get to the page where we edit the content. This is identical to editing the content of an existing page. The only difference is that we don't have to specify the page template, and that once we publish a blog post, it's actually automatically added to the site. We don't need to manually add it to the navigation. Most of the time, though, you won't be editing existing blog posts. You'll be creating new blog posts. So again, we can go to the post page and hit Add New, or we can go to New Post. Either or, we'll create a new blog post. We can add our new title. Then we add our content. So I could add, a heading, it's a blog post, maybe it has some gibberish, maybe there's some photography you want to add, so on and so forth. You add all your content, and again, this is good for, I have an event coming up, here are the details, here's a highlight at a past event, some photography, here's, a change in policy, visitation, things that are topical information that are relevant to users right now, but may not be relevant to users visiting the site many months down the line. If you're trying to add something to the site that will be relevant to users many months down the line, we would recommend adding them as a post or a page, not a post. But for the blog posts, again, it's as simple as adding the title, adding your content, and then just hitting the publish button. Once you hit the publish button, that will automatically add your blog post to the latest events page. So if I go to who we are, latest events, your most recent blog post would appear above this latest events blog post that was added to the site. And that's done in chronological order. So every time you add a new blog post, it always appears at the top, and then any older ones just get moved down the page or onto a secondary page after this. There's not a whole lot more to say about that. It's all pretty straightforward with posts. It's really just the same as editing a page. It's just, you don't have to set the page template, and it's automatically added to the site rather than needing to go into the navigation menu. The next things I want to cover are like more maintenance focused, more update focused, more things that you're not likely to change very often. So I'm going to kind of gloss through a lot of these. The first thing I want to show you how to do is how to change the destination of the contact form. So this is useful if the staff of your website changes or the person who is receiving the contact form submissions changes. In order to do that, because this is controlled with a plugin, we can't just hit the edit page button and edit that contact form. If I do that, you'll see that where that contact form appears actually is just like a single line of text wrapped in hard brackets. This is what's called a shortcode, and what this does is it basically tells WordPress, instead of loading this text, I want to load this particular bit of functionality. In this case, it's loading the contact form. So in order to add the contact form, I need to go to Contact in the dashboard sidebar, click on the form I want to edit, and then from this page, I click into the Mail tab. From the Mail tab, the very first option is the To field, and the To field is where I can adjust where these emails get sent. Again, once I've made my change, I need to hit the blue Save button to save those changes, or they won't be saved. That's really it for editing the Contact Us form. The other thing I want to point to your attention is all of the contact form submissions are saved into the content of the site. So if there's ever an email with an issue with emails, let's say the emails don't reach their recipient, or they get filtered as spam, or for whatever reason they don't arrive, we've added a plugin called Flamingo, and this just records the submissions of the contact form for you. So this has all of the different submissions for the contact form, and you could click through into one of these and see the specific content that they have sent. So if I go into inbound messages, I can click on one of these, and then you can see the content that they've added. This one looks like it was spam, so it probably wasn't even sent over to your emails. Awesome. So that's the contact forms, and I should have to access the log. The next thing I want to show you is some of the more the theme customization settings. These aren't things you're likely to need to adjust very frequently, and a lot of these are settings that we've configured for the construction of the site. So I just want to briefly show you this, and this is you get here from the theme settings page. There are two different pages here. First is theme settings and individual facility site settings. So on the theme settings page, this says stuff like what's the logo, what's the phone number, what's the link to the Facebook page. This allows you to set the featured image for latest events, specifying the name so we can use it as a short code. And then there's some options for the sidebars.
Followed by pound. Otherwise, just press pound to continue.
So we've got different options for the sidebar. So you can set the default featured image. So if you ever leave the featured image blank, it will manually pull whatever you set here as an override. Then you can specify the buttons in the sidebar. So for instance, if you didn't want to have a link to the Facebook page in the sidebar, you could disable it there. And then the destination to those specific sidebar links that are specified. So basically, what is the latest events page? What's the career opportunities page? What's the volunteer opportunities page? Again, most of these are things that are set up that you won't need to edit. Here's one thing you may need to come back and edit, and this is where our team bucket settings are stored. Since you can choose to display this bucket on any individual page, it didn't make sense to have, you have to edit that content on each page specifically. So instead, we've aggregated that content to this page. So this page controls the settings of that our team bucket, which can be echoed on any existing page. Then at the bottom, we've got some more theme configuration. These are just some footer settings. Now I'm going to go through the individual facility site settings. In this, we can choose whether or not to display the virtual tour. Again, that's at the very bottom of the page. That's the photos that appear in this section and where this links to. This is something that, again, is always set up for your site, so not something we need to adjust unless you wanted to change those images that appear in the bottom. That's it for individual facility site settings. I think that actually wraps up pretty much everything on the site. Like I mentioned at the start, the one thing that I'm not covering on this call is the job posting information. So if that's something that you need to be trained on, definitely reach out to me and we can set up a specific training specifically for managing the job posts. But as that's a niche functionality that not everyone uses, I don't want to waste all your guys' time going through that pretty complex functionality when it's not something you're likely to use. So that said, that pretty much concludes showing all of the different features the sites have and where you edit the content. Does anyone have any questions regarding anything I covered today? All right. So if that's the case, then that concludes the WordPress training session. Again, I do want to remind you guys, I did send over a document that outlines step-by-step instructions for pretty much everything we just went over. So as you go into the sites to make your changes, you can refer to that document as a refresher for what we went through. And if things still aren't making sense, again, we do not bill for support. We don't bill for training. If you want to give us a call, we're happy to walk you through the process again or answer any questions you might have. And if it's something that you're not comfortable doing on your own, we're also totally happy to make changes on your behalf. If our team needs to go on the site and make changes, that's something that we would bill for. So just be aware of that. But that's something we would get approval for, if it's something that we would need to bill for. I will say we don't generally bill for things that are super minor. If it's going to take us less than 5 or 10 minutes to go into the site and make a change, we're happy just to do that free of charge. So just let us know if anything's not making sense, or if you're anything less than really 100% confident and comfortable in making changes. We definitely encourage you guys to reach out to us and use us as a resource so that we can keep your sites looking great and up to date with the content that you guys want. So all that said, that pretty much concludes the call, unless you guys have any questions or anything else for me. All right, well, that wraps up the call. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And then, like I said, feel free to shoot me an email if you guys have any questions, or give us a call, and we're happy to walk you through anything as you go through the sites and as you log into the sites for the first time. If you guys need users created for the sites, if you don't currently have access to the sites that you need access to, please reach out to Lisa Gardner, and then have her email me requesting to have you set up for those sites. Once I get that email, I can set those up. I just want to make sure that we have, the right people are getting access to the right sites. Awesome. So that pretty much concludes it. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I probably will speak to some of you guys soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, you guys have a good one. Bye-bye.